The next major patch just got exciting. Where we're going next. Now, I'm sure he's talking about this giant crystal that the goblins recently discovered in the next patch coming up here. We've seen it already in 11.0.5 as it approaches, and it means something, clearly. This crystal came out of nowhere. Hallowfall people are building, the Arathi are building a ship to go see it. It clearly means something. Let's see what Bellular has figured out.
Welcome back. Today I've got something exciting. Blizzard have added character interactions that specifically definitively point towards where we're going next, and it's actually more exciting than I was expecting. Patch 11.07 and 11.1 will likely not be revealed until the Warcraft Direct, which we expect to be this November, but keeping with how Blizzard just want the narrative to flow more, for the game to be more cohesive, 11.05 is already teeing us up for that content. That said then, let me tell you a story. Ansarek's War is finished. At the Cathedral, we stopped Xalotat's most immediate plans, and for the Arathi, that basically means a degree of freedom. Yes, Belladar still darkens, but no longer do they fear the complete destruction of their new home, and that means they see opportunity. Now, we've already re-established trade between them and the Earthen, and 11.05, we've actually began to see that bear fruit.
By the way, I love this. Like, when we kill a boss and the story actually starts to advance in the game, it does feel really, really good. I like to see the story kind of change and evolve as we kill bosses, and this looks like it's what's happening.
Entering into the forge grounds of Dornegal, we find Hallowfall engineers, and they're doing more than just mingling. You see, nearby we find Votgret, who is the market reeve of the forge grounds, and she's chatting with Valentin Thuradin, who is an Arathi airship engineer, and something
Psycho
sneaky is going
Potato, thank you for the follow and welcome to our Scourge.
on. The pair are talking about a construction project. They say that it's going to take vast supplies, and Valentin even let slip that airship captain Lancecat is pleased with their expedited progress, and we can quickly deduce just how secret this whole thing is. Valentina accepts new tool shipments, right? But she turns down the offer of more engineers, and that's apparently because the Arathi standards are really strict.
Right.
Then we hear a line that suggests things are a little bit of a ruse. She says she'll tell Votgret where the ships are going, but she'll only do it behind closed doors.
Yeah, this is cool. This kind of assumes that, people are walking around, the players are listening, and this in private part means that we don't know yet why they're so interested in this crystal, what it all means, but we do know that it's clearly important enough for them to build a ship to go find it, as they did when they first discovered Belladar and Hallowfall.
So, whatever it is, it's secret. It's only built by the very best. And, of course, Dornegal is a city, so word does spread quick, but not specifics. Going around, we hear two Storm Rangers gossip. They're essentially wondering aloud if Merrick's, the council ward, will object to this new project. But either way, it at least seems he's in talks with them. Building an airship is one thing, but this is a massive project that's going on somewhere on the surface. And if Lancecat is interested, then surely it must be a military project. And if they're undertaking a journey like Votgret says, then they're going to need multiple airships, so it must be some sort of airbase. I mean, the characters emphasize the vast resources required. And if it's an airbase or any military adjacent presence, no wonder Merrick's is talking with them. This would be the Arathi establishing a military foothold on his island. These are the Arathi who come from an empire that openly brags about conquest through...
Yeah, that's right, man. I'm sure the Earthen leadership kind of would be concerned about this, right? We just helped the Arathi finally defeat the enemy that basically had them holding up in their fort down in Hallowfall all this time, and now they're coming back to the surface, and their first objective is to basically conquer a newly discovered crystal zone. So yeah, I'm sure the Earthen kind of are concerned by this, and as he's discussing here, yes, the Arathi do brag a lot about their faith in the light and their ability to conquer, their foes and enemies. So yeah, certainly there could be some conflict here going forward.
Steel. That's going to be a little bit worrying. But for now, at least these Arathi are our allies. So let's say Merrick's trusts them. Where are they going? There are two answers to this. One is long-term, the other is short-term, and the short-term one is directly substantiated with new dialogue. And to help us do all this and afford the time for all the pretty shots, here's today's sponsor. They're going to get you from idea to done fast. They're Squarespace.
There it is.
And when I needed a job site a while ago,
Arathi next bad guys, I do think that the Light Emperor, who we know sent over the Arathi a while back, I do think we are going to get some type of bad, evil arc out of him. And eventually we're going to go to this other side of Azeroth or whatever it is and see this Arathi kingdom and have to deal with them. Yeah, bombastic side eye. Yeah, yeah, maybe,
And once you've got the
maybe.
big picture laid out, their block-based editor makes crafting your site so simple. You
What
need
a
no web development skills, and that means you can just focus on design and content. And if you want even more control, their fluid engine feature is an absolute game changer. It just lets you move things to where you want them granularly while still having it be responsive across screen sizes. It's incredible. And everyone should have a killer website that represents them. A good first impression helps you with jobs or even just hosting your
I'm gonna make
portfolio
a
or your
recruiting
side
website
hustle.
for the
And of
Arathi.
course, if you want business, they have got you covered. And you can do so much more. Be that courses, be that bookings, maybe you're teaching people online, maybe you're running a hairdresser. You can run it on Squarespace. And most importantly, it's all of that in one package that is easy to use, which means that you can focus on the bit that actually matters, achieving your goals. So if you go to squarespace.com/bellulargaming, you can get your site built today with a free trial. And then when you're ready to send it live, you can get 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain
There
with
it is.
code bellulargaming.
Use the code.
Location 1 will definitely happen at some point, and it is home. Remember, these Arathi came here on a mission. Their mission is to find the Emperor's vision, to establish a presence, and then to report back. Now,
Right.
parts 1 and 2 of that plan worked, but of course, they got trapped in Hallowfall, and they lost all of their mages. Now imagine if those mages had have survived, if a portal to back home was established. If that was the case, then would the Empire's vast armies control the land? I would say probably.
Probably,
At any
yeah.
rate,
Based on
now-
how the Light Emperor talks about this crystal and the importance of it, I think had the mages survived, they would have opened up a portal and surely thousands of Arathi soldiers would have poured in and he would have taken over this island. I don't think if he sent over this group, right, of soldiers, which was much bigger than what we currently see active here, he probably believed this was very important and worthy of conquering. So, maybe the mages not being there actually stopped a war from happening. But we'll have to see eventually if these Arathi, who now have become our friends and empathize with us as characters and as the Earthen, end up fighting back against their own people, because surely their own people don't see it this way.
narrative potential here is quite clear. Characters like Faerun
right.
in dialogue that's shipped with War Within suggest that...
And I wonder how they feel about the goblins, because I'm sure he's going to talk about it in a minute. The goblins are also very much interested in this new crystal.
home, while she does seem to have liked it, is not a welcoming place. To put it bluntly, the vibes of these Arathi are rather
Yeah,
menacing,
exactly.
and I'm
Imagine
sure
the
they
whole
wouldn't
fleet.
be that happy to hear that we slaughtered the Priory leaders. Now, of course, Faerun and some of the Hallowfall expedition would take our side, which basically means clear drama. That means content. I think it'll happen, but not immediately. You see, Location 2 is
up,
new,
Cosmetic?
and it's much more likely. Walking around Dornagal, we overhear two goblins having
Here
a
it
chat.
is.
Ricket, a goblin that we first meet in Wrath of the Lich King, is talking with her friend Skagit, who travelled with us to Draenor. She tells him of a call that they heard when they were sailing, right? So they hear this call. Her crew follow the call, and they come upon a sight they did not expect. An island adorned by a big crystal. Now, when this happened, a storm loomed. The atmosphere turned eerie, so sensing risk, these goblins decided to turn back. Now, both of these goblins are part of Gazlo's grease monkeys. Rick even
Interesting.
mentions that Gazlo is getting them a zeppelin to fly back to the island, potentially to mine the damn thing for profit. And that means we've also got the
Fucking
workings
goblins.
of a proper goblin expedition.
Yeah,
Now,
so the goblin expeditions out there, obviously, if they tried to take a pickaxe to the crystal, I'm sure the Arathi would have a problem with it. So that could lead to some issues between the Arathi and the goblins, and maybe the Horde is a greater issue with them. But the goblins clearly interested. Now, the way she describes their approach to the crystal and how a storm started to gather does sound like the story of the Hallowfall soldiers, right? Like the Arathi, when they came over in their blimps, the story is they approached the crystal, they were getting closer, and then the storm happened, the flash of light, and then they were inside of the Hallowfall cavern, right? So maybe they were about to get to that point, but they turned around. The goblins stopped going forward. So we'll see now as they reapproach it again with their new expedition in their Zeppelin. Who knows? Maybe they're going side by side with the Hallowfall soldiers in their air blimps. We'll see if this leads to any kind of conflicts.
We don't know for sure that this crystal on the island is Beladar, but I think it's hard to imagine that it won't be. I mean, the chances of a second giant crystal that calls out to people does seem to be pretty slim, and it makes sense that this is just the top tip of Beladar, the bit that we don't see from within Hallowfall. And where things heat up is that according to some earthen gossip that we overhear, this discovery has reached the ears of the Arathi. Putting two and two together then, we can infer that the journey they are building this fleet for won't go homeward, that instead they'll be going to this land, going to this crystal.
I think they are.
That makes sense. It would always be their priority. Remember, their goal was to establish a presence wherever the Emperor's vision was found. If this is the tip of Beladar, then it's exactly that. And that means that for the likes of Captain Lancecat or even General Steelstrike, who I imagine, are our friends, they would put their overall mission ahead of our friendship, and they certainly would not stand for goblins getting there first. Even less so if the goblins plan to mine it, because it to them is a form of holy object. Let's get meta for a second, put this in context. We know that 11.1 being a major WoW patch has got to have both a raid and a new zone. Now, having Beladar on an abandoned island sounds like a perfect patch zone. I mean, we'd see the impact of both the light and the void in nature, and at the same time, we'd be building and defending fresh encampments. You'd have the goblins there, you'd have the Arathi there, a lot of things just naturally make sense. Maybe we've got some antagonistic Arathi people, maybe the Venture Company could act as enemies to the goblins. There is so much narrative opportunity there, actually, and then opportunity to learn the truth behind Beladar while Xal'atath takes a little bit of a backseat in the story for now. There's just tons of inherent drama in the race to this crystal and what the different characters will do when they get there. And I certainly know that I want as much Arathi drama as possible. Because
Arathi drama along with the fact that the goblins could discover Undermine over here. That's been hinted at quite a lot. Discovery of Undermine seems to be something that's going to happen in this expansion. And obviously, if this crystal happens to be near their city, I feel like the goblins are going to feel like they have a claim to it, right? Even it could be even hanging in their city, much like the Hellfall crystals just hanging in the top of the ceiling here. I mean, Undermine is an underground city. If the crystal now has like approached it at a point, they're going to feel like this belongs to them now, and I'm sure the Arathi are going to have an issue with that if that happens.
I think they're basically awesome. As for the raid then, we already suspect it's going to be goblins. That's because back before this expansion released, we found an icon-labeled goblin raid, much like other hints we've picked up in data mining, things like the Emerald Dream outdoor gear and the Zaralek Cavern icon back in Dragonflight. So with that in mind, it was no surprise when we went to Azkahet and ended up finding Gazlo and a whole bunch of goblins. And if Blizzard introduced those characters in 11.0, it was obviously because they planned to use them. You see, while the Earthen, the Arathi, and the Nerubians were the main focus of the story, goblins were spread around everywhere else, and that actually started before launch with a short story called The Goblin Way. And in that we learn that Gazlo has got a grand ambition. He wants to reform goblin society. He kind of wants to kill the Galliwick's sheer greed, profit before people, but mostly also short-term profit over long-term profit. He still is a goblin. He wants to do goblin things, but he doesn't want short-termism to kill everything. And because of that, he's absolutely not a fan of the Venture Company's flagrant disregard for the world. And that does mean that the long-running goblin abuse of the environment, which has been a recurring theme from vanilla onward, well, that is finally addressed here. Where the short story makes it clear is
he's almost trying to change the nature of goblins, right? I mean, goblins have never cared about anything other than making a profit. I mean, their literal life slogan is "time is money, friend." That's it. I mean, they just believe that whatever time you're spending, if you're not making money in that time, you're wasting that time. So, he's trying to change basically how they do everything. And they're just their most inert nature. We'll see if he's actually successful in that. The funny thing is, he doesn't seem opposed to mining this crystal. So, yes, he's still very much a goblin at the end of the day. And he's, in fact, commissioning a Zeppelin to go over there and figure out what this thing is about. And I'm sure Prophet, he's sneaking it in the back of his head. He is a goblin, after all.
Where Noggenfogger shoots back
Goblin
at Gazlo.
Druids?
He says, sustainable, what are you, a shaman? And this lets Gazlo snap back to say that Azeroth herself is out of patience with their ways. Now, if you connect that, the way a shaman was mentioned, to the elemental agitation across the Isle of Dorne and in the Deeps, and then we just have overarching themes absolutely everywhere. Connect, of course, that with the Goblin quests in Azkahet, and we have got obvious upcoming plot. They don't look that important at first glance, but some of the side quests in Marl do set up our future. You see there, with our help, Gazlo puts a non-violent end to the Venture Company's shenanigans. And what happened is they basically dug their way into Ajget from somewhere else. They arrived there independently of us, and Jenny Boonbuckle, the leader, is basically just trying to make money at any cost. Now, we do stop her. Gazlo's more diplomatic ways do mean that he ends up taking her out to dinner and learning what she's all about.
Oh.
And when he does that, she reveals that she's from Undermine, which is, of course, the goblin home city deep under the...
As I said, like, Blizzard keeps dropping these hints about Undermine. I don't think it's for no reason. I do think at some point we are getting an Undermine patch. And I think that'd be awesome. I'd love to see another big city, underground, maybe a dungeon attached to it or a raid or something where we got to retake Undermine. It'd be awesome. So I'm excited to see this place.
Now destroyed Isle of Kazan. And if just one mention of the Goblin capital wasn't enough, shortly after Gazlo takes us aside and he basically says that we'll need to have a talk about Undermine later. With this stuff, it very much looks like later is going to be now. But that wasn't all for the goblins. We also met the Darkfuse in the Ringing Deeps, and these guys seem to basically be Xalatath-pilled goblins. They had no follow-up, but I've got to imagine there will be some soon. And finally, when we were there, we saw this caved-in tunnel entrance. Now that tunnel entrance looks suspiciously like a phasing entrance, like the ones that took us to Zaralek Cavern. And even more suspiciously, if you just face directly at it and open your map, you do see that it points roughly to where Undermine would be. And for our final tidbit, it's just a quick walk over from there to Opportunity Point. There we see unaffiliated goblins showing up to mine something of value, and putting a few things together, it does appear to be Kajamite, which, if you know goblin lore, will get your head going, but that's a story for another day. The concept is essentially this. The Arathian goblins race to an island that we all believe holds Beladar. Whatever goes down there likely...
Kajamite, yeah, big deal to, if you don't know, that's the thing that made goblins smarter. So, of course, they have an affinity for it still. It was the thing that originally gave them their superior intellect. Right? You say what you want about goblins. They are a very smart and intellectual race. So, more Kajamite, maybe smarter goblins, even more than we already have. Who knows? But yes, any Kajamite discovered is going to be of extreme interest to the goblins, for sure.
Goblins race to an island that we all believe holds Beladar. Whatever goes down there likely then takes us to Undermine, where we perhaps deal with the Venture Company, right? It's the home of the Venture Company. Perhaps even there are forces there who are under the influence of Xalatath, so maybe those Darkfuse will end up being relevant. Maybe we see Arathi armies fighting goblins. Of course, at this stage, we can only guess as to how Blizzard will connect these things together, but to me, it does sound quite exciting. The idea that we could go to a patch, walk right up to Beladar, and see exactly what it is. That sounds cool, and at any rate, the Arathi versus Goblin showdown may show us the first hint at what the Arathi Empire are truly like.
Yeah.
After that, of course, we will have one more patch. There will be a patch 11.2, and I think I have a fair idea of where that's going to go. And to understand that, well, you gotta learn about the Haranir and the Rootlands. If you want to know what's up, check out this video.
That's coming
next.
too. Yeah, the interesting thing about all this is we might see the other side of the Arathi, and I don't mean their empire, but in fact the other side, they're very much a waristic, tribe or whatever you want to call them. They're very like militaristic tribe, I should say. They're very much into military. Their entire society is kind of built around the light and conquest and conquering, and we haven't really seen that side of them yet because we've been helping them this entire time. We've been helping them get over the Nerubian threat and everything, and now they're free of that. So their mission to kind of build a society or build I guess, to conquer around the crystal and capture the crystal for themselves kind of takes the forefront again. And the goblins are going to get in the way of that. So is there going to be a conflict between the goblins? Probably. Could it lead to a greater conflict against the Alliance and Horde as a whole? Maybe. Which eventually leads to this Light Emperor being the bad guy, which I do think could eventually happen, and we could see all of that come to fruition here. And this patch right here would be the start of that.